Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the While We Still Can podcast. Today is March 27th, 2026, and I'm Lisa. Tina's here, and we're happy to have Anthony Andrews back. from Anthony from Twitter. We're
Hello,
going to
happy
talk about the
Friday.
week we've had, y'all. Stuff's
Well,
popping
Tony,
off. I'm sorry, right out the
Tony,
gate.
Tony
Right out the
is a
gate.
shit magnet, y'all.
I don't
Like
even know what to
Sorry.
say.
he manifested his
Chaos.
Destiny.
flight, but in a
Yeah.
great way. No, Tony, when we met Tony was like, I want to just communicate important things to people. I want to teach them how to do it themselves, but also I'll make it even easier and I'll make it in a very good format for you to read. And now Tony is like the world's journal
Yes.
diary
And in
with
general
its
terms,
darkest, yeah.
we're here, just to review, we're here to talk about Missouri politics, national politics, international happenings. We're branching out South America, Europe, all over the place.
Transnational
Yeah.
organized crime
Yeah.
syndicates.
And today I want you all to know that Tina labeled the email. What's it say, Tina? Aliens are arriving or something
Oh, yeah, I think they're going to be here on Easter.
on Easter?
I
Are
thought
they
that was
rising?
last year.
Rising on Easter.
Okay, you know what? We're calling them interdimensional beings from now on because I don't want to piss them off, okay? But I also was a little nervous about them coming because I'm like, oh, scary. But I think we literally are ran by like pedophilic baby eaters. So, like, they can't be that bad, right?
Yes.
Wasn't it adorable like 3 years ago when things were normal?
Yeah, I mean, you did not say anything wrong when you
I
said that.
I know that. I'm just trying to critically think with my foil. My kid stole my foil hat, by the
Well,
way.
and the
So
crazy thing is, I mean, as we continue to just go day by day and we have our little conversations and we see things online and then we start talking about things and then we start finding things. It's shocking how it just gets that much more relevant and everything comes together rather than debunking like these
right.
conspiracies and all this stuff. I mean, it's
I didn't
the
want it
more
to
I
be
look,
real.
the more real everything becomes less real. And I'm the guy that wants to debunk it if I can. You
Yeah,
all know that.
that's part of why we're here is.
We're like, wait. It's
Yeah.
like the guy, there's this book called The Gods of Eden. The Gods of Eden. And it's about a guy who, oh, speaking of aliens, I need to bring this up. He was literally set out to write the book about, to disprove that aliens were real. And then the more he got into his research, by the end of the book, he was like, fuck. So that's all I have to
Well,
say about that.
yeah.
I'm done.
I hope I live long enough to see what's you know documented as absolute truth and what turned out to be rumor.
Yeah, absolutely. But our reality right now is hard enough to keep up with as it is. I was literally talking to a customer the other day, I think, and because I've been back to work all week, I'm about
Yes,
dead now. Thank you.
congratulations.
But yeah, my body tells me every day, "Congratulations, Tony. You can't do all this anymore." I
Yeah.
will be though. But anyway, I was talking to somebody, and we were talking about the my brain went fart. Sorry, move on. I'll tell you in a second. It'll come back to me in 30 seconds.
Aliens. They stole your thought.
They probably did, and I still haven't thought of it.
Damn it. Damn it. I was trying to give you time. Okay.
Do you remember when maybe it was just my great grandma, but she would like take like aluminum foil that she had used for a purpose and like wash it off and reuse it. You have like a
Yeah.
foil drawer.
Uh
Mm.
huh.
I
Well, we
think
didn't have
foil
the
must have
foil.
been scarce at some point
The Great
because
Depression.
Well,
Everything.
yeah, probably.
That's
Well, probably during the World War II, because of the metal.
I
Everybody
wonder
had.
if it will become scarce during the Iran war.
Well, did you see the energy rolling blackouts for the energy? There's like places in California that's telling them to like conserve. They want them to start. I don't know.
And I'm gonna.
Sorry.
Well, one thing Biden said, and I don't think everybody remembers this, but towards the end of his term, he said, "Everybody just has to live to learn." Not with less necessarily, but live to learn to use their resources better and not be so extravagant with things. You know what I'm saying? He's like, you can
We
live.
are ridiculous.
Yeah, and I talked about it too. We can live a good life without having to spend the money on the newest thing. We don't always have to keep up with the Joneses. I mean, I cut my income and my lifestyle in half moving from Chicago to where I am now. And I've been able to still buy a house in that time frame. Still do, I took 2 months off with no pay. I mean, so it's just a matter of how you approach things. And, we had planned for it. And unfortunately, people just live too much for the now. And that's the American way.
Well, it sounds like they're not really going to have a choice coming up because gas prices be. Oh, and my dad got me a bunch of the stickers for the gas pumps. He just gave them to me, actually. He ordered the real ones. But,
What do your
yeah,
stickers say?
there's all different ones. There's Elon, there's Trump, there's I did that, there's I don't know, weird shit. But I love my dad. But yeah, gas is up $1. And you know what? It's funny. Maybe I am becoming a Republican because I care about gas prices. I care about paying, like, I'm not paying my taxes this year. So maybe they did say that I would get more Republican as I got older.
Well, it's been a crazy week. And as we know, I've been talking to a couple different people and had a few crazy days. And I think one of the things we were talking about earlier is, with ICE and some of the things that are going on there and the detentions. I think before we got online here, we were talking about let's turn it on them and lock them up instead of letting them lock us up. I mean, that's really where we are right now. And people still don't get it. It's shocking. I see a lot of people are finally maybe being a little more aware of it. But in terms of the actions, everybody's talking about tomorrow, no King's March and stuff, and it'll be great tonight. I know there'll be an amazing turnout, and I'm glad that Americans care that much. But what is it doing to fix the problem other than raising kind of that awareness? But the slow and steady in this case doesn't win the race. We can't be slow about things anymore.
No, no. When you do an action like that, you really should have a clear cut demand.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
mean,
and we
that's
are at the
really.
demand point.
But I understand the point of it, but it is catchy. Um,
Oh,
we're
here,
using
let me.
it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and I'm sorry. Let me. Is it relevant anymore, though? I mean, I get it, but in terms of what we should be really focusing our age on, all this
Right.
craziness that we have going on, the
Yeah.
fact that we're at war, nobody should have a no king sign. They should have a no war sign tomorrow. I'm not sending my children or grandchildren to die because Donald Trump is a pedophile.
And I totally agree. I'll tell you that my organization, at least that I'm working with, is using the messaging of the nationwide protest, because everybody's talking about no kings, but we're using it to amplify
Yes, the protest part.
community
Yes.
local issues that we can actually impact, if that makes sense. So like
No, it
we're
does.
using, so everybody is looking for one of those protests. We're doing it at the Capitol, but we're actually, like, our speakers are going to be addressing things that are happening locally that are going to impact our state, and talking about that
Well,
you
no,
know
and that's amazing because that's what I want to hear, and that's why I ask these questions and I kind of push back on this stuff because those are the types of actions we need to make sure that each of these protests have, that the speakers are talking about relevant things, not just getting up there, whether it be to promote their own aspirations locally or do anything like that. But it should be, how is this affecting us, our community directly? And also, what are our plans to fix this? Yes, we can't fix what's going on in Washington at the moment right now ourselves in our little community, but what can we do in our community to be less impacted by the negative?
And that's key. That's how things are going to change, is when enough people in the local level start to, and that's why it's so encouraging to see all these elections that Democrats are winning, that perhaps were Trump voting areas before, and again, if you're new here, folks at home, we're not super happy with Democrats either. We're unhappy with the system and how we need to change the system. However, we know things are only going to go worse and worse and worse as long as Republicans have control right now. Our car collectively, we are side over side rolling down the highway right now. And what we're trying to do is land on our wheels and have the ability to drive away from the scene of the accident. And then we can get the body of the car fixed later somehow. Is that a decent metaphor?
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, that's what we got to do, is start from the bottom up. And I think that this is a good opportunity, because you guys, we've all been zeroed in on this for a long time, but a lot of people are new here. A lot of people are just starting to figure out how badly this is going to affect them. And one of the things that I think is an opportunity here is to remind people that everything we see right now, it was outlined in Project 2025. And specifically lately, the TSA shenanigans, because they've always wanted to privatize TSA. And I think the goal right now, where I'm reading, and again, I haven't talked to anybody that actually works there, but it looks to me like they're trying to get them in such desperate straits by not getting paid that they just quit. Lots of the TSA employees quit. And so that would affect the union situation, and then they could, once that's taken care of, they could privatize it for good.
Yeah. Well, and that's what they're doing practically everywhere, is just making it as miserable as they can.
Yeah, they're like breaking it so then they can come in and fix it.
The Department of Education, right? They've made it so insufferable that...
WWE.
Yeah, exactly. People's elbow from the top rope. It's bad.
Well, and that's where we need to, and I continue to say this, is plan for the worst and hope for the best. I mean, we can't continue to be reactive to the things we know they're going to do. Right. And one of the things we know they're going to do come January is they're not going to turn over power to Democrats, even if it is a landslide. Right. And yes, all of the efforts we're putting forward right now are great, and we should be doing that to make sure that we have it in the bag.
Right. But what's the plan?
Yes, what is the plan to deal with Trump January 6th second act? Yeah, 2026. Or 2020, no, yeah, 2029. No, this year. I'm talking about 2027.
Oh, you mean to
not January 3rd. I'm talking about, it's January 3rd that Congress is...
You're talking about seating the new Congress.
Yes, seating the new Congress. It's the 3rd that's seating the new Congress. And that's insanity. And that's when, to give you guys an idea, Marjorie Taylor Greene, if I recall correctly...
She's been awfully quiet.
Yeah, and she asked for a pardon like 3 days after she was sworn in for Congress. Yeah. I mean, that list is out there. Nobody put attention to it because we're so gaslit by everything else. Right. But we have to focus on the most important things. So, yeah, it's the insane.
They're going to have to do what they need to do and ask forgiveness, not permission, when it comes to, taking the seats that they've been elected to take.
I'm glad you said that. It's another one of my favorite live-bys.
Yes. All men live by that, Tony.
Yeah.
Okay?
Don't ask for... it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission.
I've heard that quite a bit.
These are not normal times.
Can I? That's a normal man quote, though. It really is.
Yeah, even
Um,
the gay ones.
but you know what I do like about that is then I can start using it and you can't be mad at me. But um, can I propose something that is this like once we however this ends up, it's not going to last forever. Like we know that. There's no way it can last forever. It could last 10, 15 years, but once we get ourselves out of this situation, do we really want to ever give anybody this much power in our country?
No.
Absolutely not. Well, and
Okay.
it's funny. Go ahead. Well, it's
Oh,
funny
no,
you
I'm
say
just oh
it's funny. Sorry, we're all over the place.
yeah.
Uh, I think on our very first podcast, because we had a very special listener that day who had commented about,
Hey, Allison.
yeah, and she had tried to come at me and again dox me a little bit after she listened to that first one because she wrote something on Twitter about me trying to turn over the United States government because we were talking about how we need to make changes in the future to the executive branch and the power it wields. I mean, that's obvious. That's beyond obvious where we're at right now and why that's so important. So this is not anything new that we're talking about, but it's what people need to understand is where we are as a nation. We cannot continue to move forward as is.
Yeah,
Once we
we're not talking about living in an authoritarian regime. We're talking about making legal changes so you can't rent a representative or a senator like you can rent a car, for your own means.
Well, it's literally what what we're learning now is they have spent the last 40, 50 plus years uh, manipulating the Constitution in various ways to support them, whether it be through the, tax laws, the, campaign laws, all of that other stuff. They've manipulated things in a way that they're doing these things legally. Like what's that one big thing that
They
happened?
literally have people that spend all their only job is finding loopholes.
Yes, but now we're beyond loopholes. We have a regime in power that's just ignoring the Constitution. It's not even a
Okay.
matter of finding loopholes anymore.
Yeah, they don't give a fuck. They're
Yeah.
like, yeah, cool.
Well, the tax
Appeal.
code, it's just a collection of special interest laws that, somebody lobbied hard enough to get the law passed. And so, it doesn't
And
need
it's
to
a,
be that way.
well, the other issue with that, and I'm gonna, we already addressed this, but this is why I'm unhappy with Democrats. It took us 10 years, I think, to realize the conspiracy is true. It's a unit party to some extent,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely.
And, they have their role, and their role is to do things that do benefit Americans, better than usually what the Republican policies are. But they still have a role where they limit their influence on the people above them that we're now learning about. I mean, this is reality. This is true reality. Epstein was influencing foreign leaders, Putin and MBS and, Trump and all these people at the highest levels. He was had direct influence on them, and multiple other people do, which brings us, to Paolo, Zampolli, who's also, not had a spotlight on him until now.
Until Tony came on the scene.
Sunday, Sunday, Sunday.
Eh. Okay, so can I say one thing about Paolo Zampoli's name that I think of every time that I hear the word Zampolli? I used to work at Olive Garden, right? And we had these little donut things, and I swear they were called Zampolis.
Well, I'm sure at least one person will correct this in the comments at some point in the near future.
I know. Okay, I'm gonna look it up. Here, keep going. Okay, tell your story. My bad.
Where do I start? One of the reasons you reached out to me initially was because of the Zampolli stuff I was writing way back in the summer, and then when I nuked, same thing with Ed Opperman. Literally, I was on his show talking about it before anybody was, and he acknowledges that as well. And
why don't you give people a quick, just very quick overview of who Zampolli is, like just who he is, and then in
Zampolli
case
is
anybody knew.
He is he's a Milanese native who was born into wealth. His father, and they're actually related to royalty. I just found his father owned the biggest toy company in Italy, which had rights to Star Wars. That he was best friends with John Casablanca since Flavio Briatore as a child, as at least a young teen. And when his father passed away when he was 18 years old, Paolo Zampolli at 18 sold that business to get into the modeling industry, where he started working directly with Casablancas, Epstein, Jean-Luc Brunel, and a number of others. Yes.
I think we did this exact same discussion last episode.
Okay.
I'm having deja vu. Yeah, because I was extraordinarily impressed of the details you could rattle off about. So I wonder if we could absolutely do it again, or we could refer people to the last one.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
absolutely. So fast forwarding to where we're at today. So Zampolli works in the White House, and he's been connected to Donald Trump and Melania for a number of years. Zampolli's the one who brought Melania over on an tourist visa, where she worked illegally before she got a different visa. I am looking into now, and this is brand new news today, is I had always speculated about the fact that Zampolli, having seen some stuff where they're like, he was the visa guy. Zampolli was the visa guy. So I've always wanted to kind of look at, how is he the visa guy? And the most important thing for everyone to know is he was Melania's visa guy from Eastern Europe. He was Melania Trump's visa guy. I've also just come across information that shows that Melania Trump and Paolo Zampolli also dated for a short time. There's actually an Instagram reel. I think I posted it yesterday. That's in Portuguese. But it actually talks about her relationships prior to Donald Trump, which were two primary relationships. One was Zampolli, and the other one was this other man prior to that. So, and nobody knows anything about Melania's relationship prior to Trump for the most part, other than we know that Jeffrey Epstein said he fucked her before he fucked Trump. So anyway.
Call me happen.
And Paolo Zampolli not only brought Melania to the United States, Zampolli also introduced Trump to Melania in that famous story. Although there's some people that believe it was Epstein, it was actually Zampolli. They were all there in the same mix for whatever. It was a Zampolli party going on. So Zampolli actually met a young woman when she was 15 years old. She actually worked for Elite Models in Brazil. She was found when she was 13 years old. Her name is Amanda Ungaro. So she was barely, a teen.
15 years old, guys.
Yes.
Like, I was so stupid when I was 15. Like, I was an idiot. I was not, like, what does a 15-year-old talk about that's fun?
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is we've talked about that, so jumping a little bit ahead for everybody that hasn't been listening, I'm actually talking to Amanda Ungaro every day pretty much. So I'll get to that in just a second. But, so she was about 15 years old when Paolo started pursuing her. From what I understand, there's a little, gray area in the story where he had noticed her in Brazil. Elite Models in Europe, which was owned by Casablanca. So she did not really know Casablanca. She met Casablanca through Zampolli after she was in a relationship with Zampolli. So that's new information for most people as well, because everybody assumes, having been an elite model, She actually worked for Casablanca. She did not. Jean-Luc Brunel, when she did go to Europe, finally, she was, I think, 16 when she went to Europe. She was 16, a child with nobody with her, and she was being groomed to be a supermodel in Europe. Uh, and that's when Zampolli was still trying to pursue her, according to what we talked about. She also Jean-Luc Brunel was actually her agent. If people don't know, Jean-Luc Brunel in 2022 had been arrested for similar circumstances to Jeffrey Epstein, having to do with abuse of children. And he was in jail, and he was Epstein, literally. Cameras didn't work, guards weren't quite doing what they should have been doing, and he was hung. Now, I recently came across information, which again was new to me, that back in 2016, I believe it was late summer, he was talking to authorities about flipping on Epstein and everybody. And this was, I think, in Europe, because that's when his troubles were starting. So he was actually considering flipping and spilling the beans on everybody involved with Epstein, including Trump. So somehow, and I read a little bit about it. It's not at the top of my head right now. I'm sure you guys could Google it too. They had come to some agreement where he wasn't going to do that, which led us to 2022 when he was in his own trouble and all of that happened. So Jean-Luc Brunel was Amanda's agent. They had flown from Paris to New York. I had been under the impression, for some odd reason, because I didn't pay close enough attention, was that it was the opposite direction from New York to Paris, but it was an actual trip from Paris to New York. And when I was talking to Amanda, she does have a strong accent. She was telling me about this trip. And I had originally thought she had said there were 3 girls on the plane, 2 rows, 2 on one side of the plane behind her, and then one behind her on the other side of the plane. But in the explosive news story yesterday in O Globo in Brazil, there were actually 30 girls on the plane when Amanda flew.
So this is reported by a newspaper in Brazil?
Yes, it is Brazil's largest newspaper. The way I would say it is, it's the USA Today, or it's called O Globo, or the New York Times of Brazil. And she, the first news story, they've actually run 4 news stories on her this week's successively, and the very first one, she was on the very front page of this Brazilian newspaper with a picture of her talking about her accusations against Zampolli and her experience with ICE, which I'll talk about in a little bit too, and everything she's dealt with. So when she flew on that plane, Jean-Luc had just said, "Oh, we're just going to fly back to Paris with a friend of mine." And she even said it was a friend and his wife, because she assumed Ghislaine was Epstein's wife. Yeah. So Ghislaine Maxwell was on the plane, Jean-Luc Brunel, Jeffrey Epstein, and there were a couple other men on the plane that somebody just sent me a name. I don't have it in front of me, because when you look at the flight log that's been released, and you can see her name on there, and you can see Jean-Luc Brunel's name, there's some names scribbled above it that are really hard to determine. You can't really see what they are, the way that the document was produced. So, and then there were, and I think, in my experience looking at a lot of these documents, I think that was intentional. They copied it oddly, so that it obscured, so that it made it very difficult to look and see whose names were on there, especially if they had 30 girls, because usually, as we know, they say 30. And she's, Amanda, and she described it in this article as well that was released. The article was released this morning. She said it was in my Wake Up 48 messages. Yes, and I posted it this morning, and it basically talks about Oh, that was, no, I'm sorry, that was last night. So this morning's was about her ice experience. But the flight was last night, and she said she knew when she got on the plane they weren't models, like flying, from Paris to the United States. They were all young. She said she could tell they were probably about 14 to 16. And some of the girls were very familiar with Epstein and even like sat on his lap and were giggling and joking with him on the flight. She spoke to Ghislaine briefly, where she told Ghislaine she was from Brazil, and Ghislaine was very pleasant with her. And then I think she had some pleasant words with Jeffrey, but she was not a victim of Jeffrey Epstein, and that's one main part of the story that people don't understand is, there's all these various levels of this abuse, this trafficking, and how it crossed into, the modeling world and and everything else that's been going on. So, here she is, a 17-year-old girl who had been working already in the professional modeling industry for, a handful of years as a child with very little guidance, flying all over the world with pedophiles, pretty much. And, she didn't know. So she basically told me, and I have a video, but she had basically told me, she's like, so I just acted like rude. She's like, I was just rude because I didn't want to know what was going on. I was very uncomfortable because I didn't understand what was going on. So I just sat to myself, and if anybody tried to approach me, I just was very like standoffish. I just acted rude, like a rude model or something, But it was to protect herself because
That was
again,
smart.
yeah, she didn't know what the hell she was dealing with. And she says they got to Paris and they went on their own, her and Jean-Luc went on their own way, and that was that. So then Paolo eventually, when she was 17 years old, flew down to Brazil to pursue her directly because now she was a little bit older, I guess, or maybe circumstances changed for him. I don't know exactly what the details were because this was probably they probably originally met about 1998, 1999.
Was he dating Melania?
Well, that's why I'm talking through some of this. We don't know what the time frame is because he dated Melania. It appears before Trump dated Melania. So let's keep track real quick here for everybody. So there's credible proof that Melania Trump slept with Donald Trump at least one time. We know. Jeffrey Epstein, based on Epstein's own words, and very likely Paolo Zampolli, who is the man who trafficked her as a child from Europe to or from South America to the United States, also through Europe, who has a record of being abusive that she's also detailed out there, including an October 2023 event that happened in South Florida, in areas that are well known. We'll leave it at that. There is a police report on that specific thing. As I have more information, I'll be sharing it in the future. So anyway, to fast forward, so Amanda was pursued by him. He wheeled and dealed and talked her into moving to the United States with him and worked for him for ID Models because that was his modeling agency that he had just created when he came to the United States. And she did that, and she moved in with him in his 5-level Brookstone or whatever you call it in New York, and that's pretty much the beginning of the end of her story in terms of the control and abuse that happened for nearly more than 2 decades, because it happens to this day, even though they broke up a number of years ago. So she had finally broke up. They had broke up in 2018. They had their son. Their son is 15 now. She had broke up. They had started their breakup in 2018. I shared a document today that she had shared with me, and she had shared with someone else that had already been posted on Substack, which was an agreement that Paolo had her sign, which stated that they were firing their lawyers having to do with whatever they were fighting about and all of this because they were, coming to terms with each other, and that specifically he was going to help her get her visa. It's stated in the document. I have it posted on my Twitter account right now, and it has her signature and his signature. I don't know the date, but it was back in 2018. So that was their initial split, because she basically dropped it because he was making all these concessions for her. And then she did come back to him, but then he was continually abusive. I also had someone contact me yesterday from Europe who had met Amanda several years ago, and had witnessed verbal abuse by Paolo Zampolli directly. And, it was something that, we're talking possibly 20 years later that this woman very specifically remembers. And I can't share her details because she wanted to remain anonymous. But based off the information I have, she's an extremely credible person. She was also abused and trafficked, and she told me, and I'm sorry, girls, I haven't even told you guys this information at all, because
Rude.
my week has been insane, to say the least. She also suffered abuse primarily from her family, and she had given me some very specific details about that would corroborate that information. But I agreed that I would keep that information to myself. She actually asked me to reach out to Amanda and just tell her she said hello, because they hadn't talked to each other for a number of years. So,
That's really cool.
yeah. So, and then yesterday I woke up and I got an email, or no, I got a Twitter message from Amanda's husband. So, so back,
Family affair.
yeah. So, and we're not talking Paolo Zampolli, because Paolo Zampolli was never married to Amanda. That was part of his abuse, is this stringing her along in a way. And I'm getting more details literally as we speak, where he had this girl that he manipulated from a teen, and for years was making her promises. He even coordinated a UN ambassadorship for Grenada for her at the same time that he was a UN ambassador for Dominica. So this is where things start to go even more sideways, and I had talked about it earlier. So he, like I said, is the visa guy, but it turns out something's going on with Dominican Republic and their UN passports. Their UN passports. It's called a green passport, and it grants diplomatic immunity to the bearer of that passport to travel to, I think for Dominica, because I was looking at all this stuff yesterday, to Dominica, it's about 166 countries as a diplomat with diplomatic immunity. And for Grenada, it's 100 and some odd stuff. And I actually have not shared this publicly yet with anybody to this detail. And I actually was talking yesterday, because my crazy week, 2 days ago, I had a conversation with Tom Latcham. He's the top journalist for Daily Beast. He had contacted me because he wanted to talk about Amanda. We talked about some stuff. They were putting together a story. They're kind of holding off right now because we don't want to do anything that's going to affect Geo in a negative way. That's the son court-wise. So we're being a little cautious in terms of that information. That's why the information I'm sharing is stuff that, literally is in the Brazilian #1 newspaper and stuff that's already been published. You look like you have a question, Lisa.
It's in the public sphere, right?
It's all in the public sphere.
And everything else is our opinion.
Yes, allegedly. And so now I went down this rabbit hole, and I was like, okay, I've always thought he was the visa guy. Now I see this stuff going on with these Caribbean UN passports that people were purchasing for tens of thousands of dollars to. And when I looked it up, and anybody can Google any of this stuff, I was like, Caribbean UN passports is, I think, what I typed in. And I said, or I think I put something like, who has Dominica passports? And the very first person that popped up was not Paolo Zampolli, it was a Russian. a billionaire Russian who's attached to all of the other Russians we are very familiar with. Again, I haven't written about this yet, but it's coming. I'm working and getting a million messages and calls. And we've got this passport issue, and then I came across one other thing. Then you've got green card marriages. So some of you may be familiar with the fact that Epstein had set up some of his American assistants with same-sex marriages. So
Karina.
yes, Karina Shuliak with it was. I thought it was Sarah Kellen, but it wasn't. It was somebody else. I forget her name. Jen. I think it was Jen something or other. And so same-sex marriages for green card purposes. I mean, at least two times we're aware of this happening, and I came across partially because not Amanda, but Becca Day had written about it, but Amanda was the one that had given me a little bit of heads up on this green card issue. And this is something she did talk about publicly, I think, in the O Globo report. And she had told me about it yesterday. There's a man, and I'll be sharing this information as soon as I get a moment's rest, who married their nanny, and and he paid her $20,000
Wow.
to marry him, and apparently he also took care of some of her other bills or whatnot, and he married her to get a green card, and then yeah, that was it. But this man, I'll write more about it, is somebody who's been in Paula's life for 30 years. And as I get some more time to dig, I think there's going to be some shocking revelations about this individual himself. So we've got.
Well,
Okay.
okay. So, you know what's crazy is we hear all the time about like immigrants taking over and everything. And like, I only see ones that, are like working hard and doing doing the jobs that no one else wants to do. You know what I'm saying? And
Mm-hmm.
I think the immigrants that they're talking about are these billionaire, like other country guys that are coming over here and doing illegal mafia shit. Right? I think that's what it is. Like they're telling on themselves.
Yeah, well, they always tell on themselves on everything. You know, I mean, Trump's selling $5 million golden visas right now, isn't he,
Right.
or golden
Yeah,
What's
whatever?
I was reading about
happening?
that earlier. Yeah.
You know, and and the funny thing is that's kind of when I realized that, along with some of the stuff that I know now, it was like, oh, I think I know who he might have learned that from. Um, and so it's just, the insanity of it all. But the one other thing I need to share about Amanda's story right now while we're talking about is her ICE experience. And this is where it gets, her story is so much more than just all of this other Epstein stuff that we're distracted with. It is so much more, because here she had a relationship with the man who also had a relationship with Melania, and he had brought Melania to the United States under a tourist visa. And I had just recently found information right before we got on this call that seemed to be his things. He set up these tourist visas through his modeling company in Europe. It actually was some loophole that they had found that he would get these girls their visas through there. I also found another man from Turkey that I'm looking into deeply that is very highly connected to visa procurement as well, specifically EB1 type visas and stuff like that, which are those types of visas we're most familiar with, called Einstein visas. And our first lady has one of those. So I think if you start thinking about all this, it all kind of comes together a little bit. And remember, we were told, oh, in 2 weeks, we'll share everything regarding her immigration status. And that was
Yeah.
10 years ago.
It's always 2 weeks, isn't it?
Oh, hold on. Remember whose funeral was it? Jimmy Carter's, and she was holding the obituary thing upside down.
Oh yeah.
Was that his
Mhm.
funeral?
Probably was, because isn't that the one that Trump didn't go to, but she did?
No, he was there
Oh, okay.
because, but maybe it was farther back than that. I don't know. My time's all fucked up. But I just remember her sitting there and I zoomed in and she's holding it upside down. The Einstein visa.
So, yeah, Einstein. Well, no, and here, let me add one thing about that. The thing is every single one of those damn things is intentional. It's fucking a psychological operation, and they do that. All these damn pictures we see where we mock all these MAGA people for writing these signs incorrectly, these words. It's either a manipulated picture online if they're spreading it. People aren't that fucking stupid. I mean, there's a handful of them out there. And yes, MAGA is God forsaken stupid, but uh, they're not walking around with signs that have idiot spelled wrong or something stupid like that. You know, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's all bullshit that we see out there. So,
Oh,
but this is staged bullshit that we see when that happens. And yeah, there's, like I said, some stupid people. And the reason I say this is because this has always been part of the operation. You know, Melania wearing that jacket was intentional.
Right. I don't
Uh,
care.
yeah, and you know, and the interesting thing, you know, when we pull all of this together that we've talked about on all of our multiple shows, you know, I showed you guys a picture recently on Twitter of Brina Naus wearing a jacket just like that. It's a different color, but it all had writing on the
Yeah.
back. And then all of a sudden, come January, uh, Melania's movie's out, and she's got that black and white poster with that very specific font with her name on the top.
Hmm.
And then mid-January, Brina Naus posts a very
So
reminiscent picture of that.
for people who haven't been following that, Brina Naus is a young lady who it's speculated that she could be Melania's daughter.
Yes.
Okay. And she sort of showed up out of nowhere, and she's a
with
DJ or something.
Well,
Zampolli.
let me just say how I came across Brina
Okay.
Naus. When the very first time I ever searched Paolo Zampolli in Google, the third thing down was a picture of Brina Naus.
Okay.
And so it was like something, it was put in front of me for a reason. And I went down that rabbit hole. And when I jumped down that rabbit hole, the two key things is was born several minutes from where, 40 minutes from where Melania grew up. She came out of nowhere and became a superstar DJ.
As
She
one will.
Yeah, you know, as we all do. And I just was reading some accounts online because, you know, everybody, I just did it this week on Reddit. People have been talking about this story for a while. And I'm like, I went in there and I said, I'm not, because some guy's like, I saw some random guy talking about this Brina Naus girl, blah, 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 on Twitter. And then I went in there the other day, I'm like, I'm that guy.
That's me. That's me. I'm the
But like I've
guy.
also seen other articles where people like I saw this guy talking about it, but you know, so it's interesting, and nobody's ever been able to debunk it. Just like I mean, I've dove farther than anybody
Yeah, who
has.
knows? It sounds like there's not a lot of information about this young lady.
Yeah, absolutely, you know,
But we're
and
also finding that with all these people that we keep meeting, they don't have any history or clear history, or their identity is
Yeah.
fucking lost. Like,
well,
I
and
didn't realize.
That
well, there's just too many coincidences. You know, Brina is also, you know, she had posted a picture of herself. No, it was Paolo posted a picture with Brina in 2016, and he posted it on his Instagram. Amanda told me the other day she was actually there. I don't know. I don't think she took the picture, but she remembers the party, and she met Brina Naus, which is my mind just about exploded when she told me that. Unfortunately, she said, you know, Brina's a really nice girl, but she really didn't know anything about her
yeah.
because they were at a party. But then 3 years later, Brina posted another similar picture at another, you know, music event or whatever of herself with Zampolli. Now they had ties in, you know, the industry, the modeling industry. But the other key thing with that I've wondered is what's her status? Because I see her in L.A., New York,
Yeah.
Miami, often.
Well, you
Las
wonder
Vegas.
if two people are dating that long, you'd think they'd be aware of who each other's close family is, their kids, their
Yeah, exactly.
you would think.
So, but even her status as just her visa status to come in here and do her show she does. I wonder who handles all that and how that.
Yeah, that's a good
I
question.
think there's a lot of rabbit holes to go down here.
Well,
So
speaking of rabbit holes, Tina went down one the other night about Mike Johnson,
ooh.
the Speaker of the House.
Have we talked about that yet?
I don't think so. You were talking about how there was an identification number that didn't match.
Okay, so his okay, so his name of course is Mike Johnson. So like it's the most generic name ever, and you go into the bar database or whatever, and you narrow it down to where he's located at, and there's like him and then another guy, and their bar numbers are obviously different, but the other Mike Johnson, graduated in in 1980, and Mike Johnson would have been like 8 years old in that year. So you know that it's not him. So,
Right.
But then you look at court cases that Mike Johnson has litigated, because remember he's a fucking lawyer, but he doesn't have a bank account, right? He doesn't have a bank account, but he's a lawyer, and so his bar number that he puts, because you have to put that on the paperwork when you sign your name or whatever as the lawyer or defense or whatever, he put the bar number of the other Mike Johnson
Mm.
on his paperwork.
How did you run across this? Are you just being like super detective and
No. I read it, and no, this is from V. What's her name? Off of
it's another internet sleuth?
Yes, and she she this was one of them that I understood. Sometimes the shit's so deep that I'm like, I'm not sure.
Not tracking.
But no, but so some other stuff that she found to kind of like double check it, because okay, maybe that was like a clerical error somehow,
which could happen.
Right. So she found the notary, because if you're a lawyer, you're also a notary, right?
Okay.
Well, the notary number is not the same as when you get assigned a notary number. It's not the same as your bar number. Like, they're not the same number. And he was putting that other guy's bar number as his notary number too.
That's very odd.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like he was. Who is he? Who the fuck is Mike Johnson?
I know you had asked me when we had first started talking, you're like, do something, find my stuff about Mike Johnson. And it's just, you're right. Who is he? Because there's just not a lot out there
Just
about
a total void.
Yeah.
And remind me how we found out that he didn't have a bank account attached to his name.
He said that because he didn't want to like turn in his tax stuff. Isn't that?
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Yeah, something about, they have all that paperwork they're
That's
supposed
so
to
bizarre.
file. I mean, there's
His
obviously
name is Mike Johnson. Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Well, and look at JD Vance. See, how many names did he have before
Right.
he became JD Vance?
He may have trouble voting because he'll have to prove citizenship, and his birth certificate probably doesn't match his ID.
Let them eat cake. Don't hold them to what they expect us to do.
When we talk about things like this, like assuming all that's true, like how many people have to look the other way or not pay attention for that to go on? Like, there's like a circuit clerk or a court recorder or somebody, I don't know the details, but that's supposed to like reconcile those documents and make sure that those are legit, like that. Or I mean, all the way up to Jared Kushner not being able to get a clearance
Yeah.
But yet there he is. He's basically being a diplomat under the table for us without a
He's being a mobster with our money.
don't appreciate it.
Well, let me mention something about internet sleuths real quick. See,
Okay.
today I had a guy come in, and because I really believe, what we do is going to be much more important historically in the future than any of the news articles that are coming out from any media in the United States at
Yeah,
this
because
point.
that's basically worthless at this point.
Yeah.
Independent media is where it's at.
Yeah. So I had a guy walk through the store today, and he had a hoodie on, and it said, "Dead pedophiles don't reoffend."
Okay.
And I'm like, yep, I love your shirt.
Wow.
So we got talking. I told him about what I had been doing. I told him about our pod, and I told him about a couple other ones that I've been on and all this. He's like, oh my God, that's great. And he's like, it's the independent journalists and the internet sleuths that are going to really help us fix this. And we see it. We're actually a part of it now. I mean, more than I could have ever imagined.
I know.
Who would have thought?
I told you. I'm still waiting for Johnny Gosh to still come inside this story somehow.
Well, he has my address.
Johnny Gosh has my address. That needs to be on a T-shirt.
I mean, I do have the number. I mean,
Text me, Johnny.
I just, I have considered, like, should I reach out one more time just to talk to this Adam Babington guy and see what's up? Because I'm trying to be, helpful.
Yeah,
I mean, it's obvious.
That's just looking for shit, bro.
Yeah.
Much like everyone's
saying.
looking for Johnny.
Yeah.
Well,
4 decades.
Well, Johnny
who's been
probably
quiet?
switches like personalities, so like Johnny has to wait for Johnny to come back to Johnny to get to Tony.
So, speaking of other, all of this stuff going on, obviously we've been watching what's going on with Sasha Barros, and, he's supposed to be doing a podcast. I think it's Sunday. I'm not sure exactly what day. I mentioned he's, his only social media he's active on is Threads. I don't know if you guys also follow. I think you guys follow him on Threads as well. Yes.
I forget I have Threads.
Yeah, so do I.
He was supposed to do a MSNBC or MS Now, right?
And he did an MS Now interview, is what we've heard. It's been acknowledged, and it's also been said that it's been delayed, or they're reviewing it. I think he had mentioned something about they were talking to another survivor also. So it's one of those things that I think they're, dicking around on a little bit.
I heard that Brendan Carr guy was like, no, the fuck you're not.
No, the fuck you're not what? Going on the show?
Gonna play that on, because isn't MS Now, isn't that on regular TV?
Yeah, well, it's cable, but yeah. And, and the other thing...
pushback, I thought. I'll double check that.
Well, I absolutely have no doubt there was pushback.
Somebody's got to put a stake through that plan.
So I think one of the things, a stake through the, oh my God.
That was great. That was great, Lisa.
Well, the interesting thing with Sasha thing is he posted a video on Threads of himself. He's got short hair now, just like in one of his profiles. It's not the same picture as in his regular profiles, because one of his social media profiles, he has short hair, and another social media profile, he's got hair like down to or past his shoulders. So he had posted a video basically talking about this upcoming podcast. So there is proof of life of him talking about this. So we've at least had visual proof of him now. The other thing that's happened today is apparently he's been communicating on Threads openly about how he feels duped. Is probably the best word, by Lisa Noel Folding, who, we've all had questions about. I think we've been open about it.
She's the lady that did the interview that got all the attention within the last couple months, right?
Sounds like crowd control.
Well, and the other thing is she also has a volume 2 that she decided she wasn't going to release. So you really have to wonder what her motives with all of that information is.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of the stuff going back and forth between the two is, what we've talked about it, both privately and on here, I think is, there's, I felt that she manipulated him, from the beginning in a way that, she was very controlling of him and not allowing him to really speak his truth the way that it needed to be put out there, because she was, she just wanted to control it, whether it be something that was controlled from the very top levels of this or not. There are indications that she did know Trump at some point in the past. She acknowledges that herself. So we don't know. I'm just very happy that Sasha is going to be able to be out there and say his truth in front of the world, and give us the opportunity to do what we do best and either help raise his voice or determine where the answers we need are.
Yeah.
Well, and if we learned anything, getting ahead of the narrative is fucking key. So, to controlling it for real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and they taught us that. You know what? I'll take it. Okay, we're getting on about an hour now, but before we get off, just so I don't feel crazy about the Zampollis, okay, I found it.
What'd you find?
Olive Garden's Zampolli,
Zampolli.
Zeppoli, are soft, airy Italian donuts fried until golden and coated in vanilla sugar.
Just missing the M and the E. But, a funny thing is about that is, when you search the proper name of spelling of Zampolli in the files, only like 3 things come up. But if you put Zampolli, you find more stuff. If you put only one L, you find more stuff. So that's the whole thing with his name, is it's misspelled all over the files.
I
Is
see.
that
That's
ciphers? Like, is that like
No.
on purpose? Are they just
No, I think it's just, the way that people,
it up.
I think it's just people being stupid and not knowing. I mean, I've even seen news articles.
lazy?
Yeah, I've seen news articles
They're
that spell his
billionaires.
name wrong.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
I want to be a billionaire.
Oh, God. Can't fucking
So
spell.
freaking bad. Okay,
Okay.
girls.
All right,
Oh,
everybody.
God.
Thanks for tuning in again to listen to us hash this stuff out another week. Tina and I, we promise we'll be back soon with some Missouri news. There's some stuff shaken down that we need to talk about, like people dropping out of the race for the fall and other stuff. So we'll be back with that. And of course, hopefully Tony will be back with us next week sometime.
Let's hope so.
I'm sure
This is a good time for all of us to say we're not considering unaliving ourselves. We're in great health. Tony's got brand new factory knees.
Yep.
So
I did not go through all this knee bullshit
that's right.
for
I
nothing.
feel great. I feel like I'm about. I mean, I feel about 32, which is not the case, but and Tina's in wonderful health.
I'm not thinking about anything bad, okay? I'm good.
Only aliens
Oh,
and Zampollis.
and dolphins.
Dolphin. Gerald. Woo!
My dad literally, I was telling him about it and goes, "Hey, please don't talk about that at work." But I gotta go.
All right, and with that,
Okay.
we bid you a good week.
All right, bye guys. Have a good
Bye-bye.
weekend. Oh.
Bye-bye.